That's UPBOptionMillionaires.com. The week that was, folks, we had a nasty week. Selling to the downside accelerated on Friday, and then after the bell, that terrible news out from Paris, France terrorist attacks, sending futures lower. Thoughts and prayers with them, but the market must trade on. It's going to open lower on Monday. The question is, where will it stop? We did have a brief respite even yesterday, the nice snapback around lunchtime before the selling resumed. Monday, the week started off negatively, but again, we had a nice little snapback, but we fell into the end of the week. If you look, I brought this up at the start of the week. The move we had in S&P 500 futures off the lows in September and the lows that we saw in August. We met the same levels that this decline started. And look at this, we're starting to get some similar price action, right? Here we go. We've got a couple nice wicks that started it all. This was in the middle of the week. And then we ultimately exacerbated that sell-off. It was a Monday, a flash crash back at the end of August. And again, the selling resumed into the end of September. So here we are. This options expiration week coming up. Are we going to have a really nasty sell-off to start the week on Monday? It's a possibility. Of course, each of these sell-offs have been nice little buy-the-dip opportunities. Of course, the latest dip at the end of September, what a miraculous move we had to the upside. Not much of a pullback, and we're starting to see these really sharp red candles. We see this 2,000 level broke in S&P 500 futures. Again, it's going to open the door for considerable weakness. Also look at the volatility index, which is elevated now back over that 20 level. My goodness, and look where we closed the week up, over 20. And if you look, you have the VIX, it's the fear index. And certainly after Friday, after the close, Paris, France, the fear is going to rise. In this market, we could see further downside, more volatility. And also not helping is crude oil. Crude oil continues to collapse, folks. I've been talking about this for many, many moons, and the long-term upward trend for crude oil broken significantly if you look from a long-term chart perspective. Go all the way back before the internet bubble. Draw a trend line across. We are below that trend line. We see we're breaking down here. Everybody keeps talking about this bottom for crude oil. Oh, here's the bottom. Here's the bottom. Well, each time each of these bounces are becoming more and more short-lived to finally collapse below levels that we saw back even at the height of the financial crisis. Crude oil, which is not going to bode well for the marketplace. We'll look right at XLE, the energy ETF. I've been talking about this coming up against long-term trend line resistance. You can see it broke down this week. A significant move, got into 69.50 puts. Early in the week did not look good as we got a little bit of a bounce in the middle of the week, but ultimately look at this. I mean, we're down under 65 on Friday. Those 65.50 puts hit pay dirt. So if you look again, everybody talks about this market being something that you want to buy here. Well, the trend is broken for XLE, and I see a similar kind of trend breaking for the S&P 500. So here you are, XLE breaking down the S&P 500. Yeah, that trend that was so easy to spot from 2009, it's starting to run out of steam here. And you can see we tried to get back in this channel here that would have maybe stoked new all-time record highs here for the S&P 500. Having a tough time, and you can almost say that this trend is broken. We've had pullbacks in the past. They were sharply reversed. Well, here, we look like we're going to sharply reverse it. If we don't get back up here in this channel and over long-term trend line resistance to new all-time record highs, we could be looking at an all-time top here that's going to send us back down significantly lower. If you look for the 20-year, if you want to look at maybe the pullback that we could possibly see, you draw a trend line across here from the tops that we saw at the internet bubble and the financial crisis, just before the financial crisis started. Draw a trend line across, it gets us about 145 on the SPY. It's not easy to sit back here and think that the prices are going to fall there, especially with all the central banks in the world trying to augment asset prices. They were trying to do that down here. Well, they've been very successful at it, but they're still doing it. Here we are up over 200% for most of the markets in the world globally. And yet here we are still trying to augment asset prices higher because inflation remains low. You would think after this move that inflation would be high. No, inflation is actually so low that we are still closer to a deflationary environment than we are of any kind of inflation, which is scary. And here we are, the Federal Reserve's talking about raising rates. My goodness, and I think that's something to do with the pullback that we've seen over the last 5 trading sessions. The jobs report on Friday. Now the odds, the economists are saying, hey, 93%, the Federal Reserve, 93% of them are saying the Federal Reserve is going to raise the Fed fund rate. Yeah, that makes sense, folks. When there's no inflation, we've been hearing the same thing since, 2009, December 2009, when Ben Bernanke put ZIRP into place and said, hey, a year or two from now, we can start to normalize interest rate policy. Normalize it by rear end. There's been no normalization. We remain 6+ years after the financial crisis, after equity prices have more than doubled, still with this monetary policy that defies logic. Yet here we are, 5+ years later, still talking about liftoff. My goodness. And talking about liftoff, Apple off its lows in May of 2013. But look at the chart, folks. I've been bringing this up for quite a while. I don't know if you call it a head and shoulders pattern, is more of my Zerg or UFO pattern. I can't even describe it accurately, but I was talking about this stock making a top. And look at this candle we've had this week. What a move to the downside, folks. And look where we ended up. These are lines I keep in place. So we're at support. Is a key week coming up for Apple. Look where it closed. After the bell, a little bit lower. So we'll see if we can get down. I talked about this when heading under 100 back when nobody wanted it back in May of 2013. I said it was going to more than double, head to new all-time record highs. People laughed at me then. And I talked about it pulling back. Heading into its earnings report, it did not happen, but it did accelerate a little bit to the upside. Went a little farther than I thought it would. I thought it would stop at about 120. So it kind of head faked me a little bit, as did Facebook did this week. Facebook out of the gate this week. I was looking for a pullback to fill the earnings gap. Yeah, it did it all in one trading session while it kind of danced and pranced with me all week long until the end of the week, about 2 hours before the close, collapsing. But I looked at this earnings gap here. Look at the earnings gap. I brought this up at the start of the week. And look where we closed. We closed that earnings gap. So if you want to look something maybe to get bullish on heading into the week, Facebook, you might want to buy the dip if we get down. And we were at this, after the bell was near 103, if you can believe that. So Facebook ended up being a great trade for downside this past week, as did Amazon. Look at Amazon out of the gate on Friday. Started out over the 667 level, bounced a little bit, got into the 660 puts early in the morning. And wow, what a day. A historic day. It's one of the days you love trading for, you wait for all week, the Friday, to take a gander at some stocks, maybe that are going to roll over. But look at Amazon. What a wonderful rollover. After the bell was down to 635. Can you believe that? What a tremendous move to the downside. Those 660 puts ended up going to $15. Same with Priceline. Priceline was doing a little bit of a song and dance throughout the session on Friday, hanging around at 113.15, 113.10 level. Got some 1,300 puts. And you can see what happened late in the trading session on Priceline. Priceline dipped under that $1,300 level with a nice vigor there with an hour and a half before the close. Down to $12.95. Those options went from $1 to $5 to $192.50 at 30 cents. Went to $1.50. So it was a nice move for Priceline. Trading for downside late in the trading session on Friday worked like a charm, as did XLE, breaking the trend. Also, Google's trading lower. They talk about the FANG. Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, all of them traded lower on Fridays. Hey, risk off is going to take some of these stocks that have recently hit new all-time record highs back down to reality. Another one that's been down to reality, GoPro. Look at that, breaking through support. I actually traded this for upside into the earnings report with a terrible move. Some of these downtrenders as in stocks that have been falling over the last 6 to 12 months. FEYE is another one. Broke through long-term trendline support. Was a great trade early in the year, but some of these momentum stocks are really starting to lose their luster, and that's concerning here going forward. LinkedIn may be one to watch here for downside, although the stock did great post-earnings. But if you look from a longer-term perspective, I love this as a bullish move to the upside. But now if you draw a trend line across, look at that. We came right up to it. We're starting to pull back. It looked like a nice breakout, did not come to fruition, could not hold. This might be something to look for a move back to 210. That would be LinkedIn, especially if we continue the pullback that we saw late in the trading week. Something to watch for upside. How about the gold miners and some of the commodity-based stocks? GDX was breaking down here, down to lows that we've not seen since the financial crisis. This could be a double bottom here for GDX, maybe a move up to 1750. FCX as well, which I talked about for downside. Another stock I called many months in advance. Everyone laughed at me when I said FCX was going to break down. And look at it, come all the way down to the lows that we saw in the financial crisis, at the peak of it when they were cutting their dividend and nobody thought it would rally. You can see the topping pattern that it put in took a little bit to come to fruition. But here we are again. Now we're down to the levels that we saw in the financial crisis. Carl Icahn has taken a stake. It's dipped down recently back to the lows. This might be something you take a swing at for a bounce into the end of the year. All right, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. I'll see you guys in the chat room early Monday morning. It's going to be an interesting week again. Sad news overseas. Terrorists continue to attack, and, thoughts and prayers with the families there. We're still got to trade the market here, and, we're going to get continued downside to start the week. Is going to be buy the dip. Are we going to hear now the Federal Reserve economists expecting maybe the rates won't be lifted before the end of the year? That's a possibility now. Now they'll maybe blame the external events that are going on in terrorists, China, slow growth. I mean, the economic data has been so bad. The only real big positive has been the jobs market, the blowout jobs report last Friday. So again, crude oil continues to break down. The U.S. dollar index, finally, just before I go, one thing to watch as well, it has broken out of long-term consolidation. I talked about this move, this parabolic move coming. It did. Talked about it heading into 2015. It did. We broke into triple digits. Continuation up to highs that we haven't seen since the internet bubble is going to affect corporate earnings going forward. Another headwind to watch, as every other central bank in the world has taken the baton from the Fed and they're running as fast as they can to augment asset prices, devalue their currency to make their products more attractive globally. All right, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. Everyone have a great weekend.